paid attention enough to know everyone's names and how to spell them?
Should we write them down?
Yeah, come on.
Oh, they are written down.
Oh yeah, we can move out.
No,
So
the first
it
one.
starts with me,
rodeo.
David.
Do it.
Then it goes to Elio, Ibarra,
If you all don't know my name, I don't know what the hell it is.
and then Omar, right? Oh, and then Ulysses is third. Omar is fourth. Anish is fifth.
I'm just trying to pick on you guys. This is how it is. People can't keep up.
Absolutely. I
Look
got
at,
lost for a second.
I see the new,
Starbucks cups?
So you don't have to ask for a straw. Now I can get it off and put my own straw in it.
New lids.
And, well, right, and they're compostable, because they're more sustainable.
They look nice.
Awesome. Let's wait for our project.
And it was weird. I was there when they gave one to. I don't get it.
All right. Good?
Are you guys recording?
Oh yeah.
Let's start it in 3, 2, 1. Start it.
So hi everybody, we're Smart Urban Planning and my name is Elio.
I'm David.
I'm Ulysses.
I'll be Anish. And I'm Omar Habra.
So first off, I'm just going to start by telling you guys a little bit of how this presentation is going to go. We're going to start by explaining to you guys who is Smarter Future Inc., why did we decide to partner with SEPA, the importance, the scope of the work, our individual sections which include the backgrounds, the possible solutions, the technical aspects, as well as the environmental aspects, and finally, we're going to end it with our Gantt chart as well as a summary.
And Omar is going to talk about who Smart Future Inc. is.
Exactly. So who is Smarter Future Inc.? We're a bunch of engineers and mathematicians. We made a company. The mission is to implement sustainable practices in urban areas with using innovative technologies. Santa Clara County, after our implementation, is going to be the model for a future urban development. The urban development is going to be in place to prevent further damage to the environment and reverse the carbon footprint that humans put on for the last 60 years.
And so why we chose SEPA, which is the Consumer and Environmental Protection Agency. They're based in Santa Clara County, and as Omar said, we value Santa Clara County as the model for the future development. So we like that they're based here, and they have projects that are very similar to the style of things that we want to accomplish. So those projects are protecting agricultural produce, promoting recycling and waste reduction, and enforcing water quality in creeks and rivers.
Now, what is the importance to all of this? We see a trend on trying to better the earth, but it comes down to making the earth better by, because there is like an increase of population, there will be traffic and car pollution, and there will be open space consumption, which is cities that are expanding. Then it moves to excessive landfill waste, which is harmful to the environment as well, and excessive energy consumption, which is crucial to survival. And we see all of this impacting the world through global warming.
So transportation is the first topic we're going to talk about and tackle, and to set the background of just some of the problems that are going on right now in our current model of transportation is a lot of traffic. From Cunningham, and Cunningham there's the quote, the statistic that people spend 2.5 work weeks of time per year in bumper-to-bumper traffic. So 2.5 weeks, you're just sitting there doing nothing, which is a lot. And so that's a lot of wasted time, a lot of carbon emissions, and so that's the next thing. Big problem of transportation is the ozone layer is depleting, and a lot of that is due to carbon emissions from cars. And with poor transportation planning, the effects are as follows. There's urban sprawl, so it's just consuming farmlands and open spaces to develop more roads. There's a lot of wasted time. There's a lot of spending that could be spent on, say, education, but instead it's being spent on developing more roads and infrastructure, and global warming itself. And so some of the possible solution that Smarter Future Inc. wants to propose is an elevated tram line. And so this is actually a picture of just a model of a bus system that China was thinking of, but it failed miserably, so it's not in effect at all. But it's a very similar concept where the tram would be elevated, it would go over cars that are driving underneath, and it would use solar and wind to power itself, but those things aren't always accessible all the time, and it wouldn't give 100% of the power that it needs. So they would also have battery packs to rely on when the solar and the wind wouldn't be enough. And those battery packs would also be powered by wind and solar so that there wouldn't be any carbon emissions with the travel. And the idea is you would use existing roads so that you wouldn't have to consume any more space to make a new type of development, say like a BART system. There's just more things to develop on. This one would already use existing roadways using the just rails that straddle the streets, as well as for the bus stops. We would like to recycle the bus stop locations that already exist for just normal VTA buses, and we could build the platforms above those so it would also protect people from rain and give them shade and stuff like that, so we wouldn't have to add any more space consumption to the project. So the technical aspects, it's going to be a 3-carriage system so that it can pivot and turn a little bit better than just this very structured one solid piece. And so each carriage is going to hold 30 people, so that'd be 90 people altogether. And the clearance is 10 feet and 2 inches, so most cars will be able to go under it. There'll be traffic signals on the back, underneath, and then on the road as well. And the cabins will be attached by springs so that the springs can bend and contract and pull but then go back to shape. And lastly, the legs are going to be on these swivel joints so that it can pivot when sharp turns are being made, because that was the biggest problem of the current Chinese models, it could not make turns. So it's just going to be designed more efficiently. And the environmental aspects of this becoming the norm of how to get from one place to the next is every 15 minutes, it could, with intervals of every 15 minutes at a bus stop, it could pick up 360 people in 1 hour. So that's a lot of cars in 1 hour that would be reduced from the road, that it would then look a little bit more like this picture if more people are using public transportation instead of their own car. It'd be more efficient transportation on the land that already exists, so just with what already exists we can maximize efficiency with it, and we would decrease carbon emissions by a lot, taking all those cars off. So now I'm going to pass it over to Elio.
So another subject that Smarter Future Inc. proposes to address is the urban waste, specifically all the waste that's going and just like increasing the amount of landfill that we already have. And the reason why it's important to address this is because it's causing a lot of environmental harm, and they fall under 3 categories. The first one is leachate, which is basically liquid trickling down from the waste, and this occurs when it rains or such, and it trickles down and it just like holds all the chemicals, creating for a toxic environment. And the one that follows is toxins, and this comes from a lot of things such as batteries, computers, once they decompose. And an example of this is after a light bulb has been sitting there and it's just decomposing, it releases a lot of mercury, and this can go down to the soil as well as the groundwater. And finally, I'm sure many of you guys know greenhouse gases, and it's important to address this because they break down a lot of our oxygen. And one example of this is methane, and it's really lethal because it's many more times dangerous than carbon dioxide. If you guys can see right over here, we have sort of a table showing a couple of countries and demonstrating the amount of landfills in each, incineration, as well as the recycled amount. And the top leading one in recycling at the moment is Germany, while we in the United States have the most, we generate the most landfill, so that's really bad. And this year specifically how the United States deals with all the waste. So 26% of it is recycled, 8% is composted, and 12% of it is incinerated, while a total of 54% goes towards the landfill. So a little bit about what we propose to do. So the solution that we came up with is known as Smarter Recycling, and this encompasses 5 aspects, and it is the pay-as-you-throw program, the use of IoT sensors, as well as incorporating multi-stream and single-stream recycling, creating IoT containers, and finally harnessing greenhouse gases. So to dive a little bit more deeper into how we're going to do this, so once partnering with SEPA, the goal is to introduce the pay-as-you-throw program, and it's already proven to be very successful. And the reason we wanted to partner up with SEPA is because they're already known, and it also helps people assimilate into this idea. So the pay-as-you-throw idea is basically you get charged by the certain amount that you track, or the certain amount of waste that you give off. And this is going to be associated with a multi-stream system already in place, which is basically just like your waste bin and your recycle bin. So you're going to get charged based on the amount of waste that you throw specifically. And in order to make sure that people don't throw their waste elsewhere so that they don't get charged, we're planning to incorporate an IoT tracking system that would be connected with people's accounts so that when they purchase something, it's directly linked to them in order to avoid waste being thrown elsewhere. And the waste that comes from the two bins, the waste and the recycling one, would be taken to an offsite where the single stream system would be applied, which is basically all the materials together, and people typically sort it out. But instead of that, we would have IoT containers that would have RGB cameras inside as well as sensors and LED lights above that would indicate to the person if the material is salvageable or if it goes to waste. And finally, this offsite would be powered by an electric engine that would use the greenhouse gases being emitted off of the landfill, and it would be burned to create electricity. So on the top left is just sort of an idea of how the container would be, and essentially it would be moved. The information would be sent to a gateway, which would then be stored in a database, and as you guys can see, the little person on the computer, it would be a user-based interface where they would determine where the material goes. And the top right as well as the bottom right are examples of how the methane gas would be burned and essentially moved into an electric generator and then processed onto other parts where electricity can be used. So finally, why this is important environmentally. So the pay-as-you-throw program has already proved to generate less landfill, and not only that, it allows for material to be returned. And so as opposed to throwing valuable material into the trash, it shifts the focus onto saving materials that would normally be unrecyclable. And this in turn lowers the carbon footprint and promotes a more circular economy. And why IoT is important, I'm sure many of you guys know, that has a lot of environmental aspects, such as monitoring wildlife, optimizing the flow of perishable goods, and as I'm discussing right now, automatic waste sorting. And finally, the importance that lies within harnessing the greenhouse gases is that it allows for less of the oxygen to be broken down. That way we have more oxygen to breathe, and the electricity can be converted into other places such as heating buildings. So now I'm going to pass on to Ulysses.
And I will be talking about one of the environmental issues, which is carbon dioxide pollution. So carbon dioxide is crucial to ecosystems and humans, but we have produced so much of it that has become harmful to the atmosphere and the ozone layers. So if I can redirect your attention to this picture here, it shows the CO2 emissions of 2016 by the Global Carbon Atlas, which was measured at about 36,000 metric tons of CO2. And our solution, my solution would be not only to reduce the CO2 emissions, but actually eliminate them from the air by capturing them through ionic liquid solvents. So what an ionic liquid is a poorly structured salt that behaves as a liquid at room temperature. So the benefits of using this is the high absorption, the modification properties, and the ability to be reused. And so throughout many implementations, we decided that tetra-butyl phosphonium would be the best to implement in the filter, which is seen right here. So the air would travel in through a unit that will then capture the CO2 particles on the filter, and then the filter would be heated up to a temperature of 102 degrees Celsius, which will excite the CO2 particles, capturing them in a tank over here. And the graph on the corner over there talks about the regeneration efficiency per cycle. And as you can see from the first rectangle and then the second one, there's a tiny little gap. So it is measured to be at an efficiency of 95%. And alrighty, and these units will be mounted on buildings because it is measured that in the Santa Clara County, a building over 5 stories will be at a atmospheric pressure of 1 Pascal, which will ease the capturing of the CO2 molecules. And as you can see on this corner here, that's where the units will be implemented in the building, which will allow more air to be seeped in through the porous materials. And how it's going to contribute to the environment is the air dispersion. Because concentrations of CO2 emissions are mostly in cities, this will allow for it to come to a halt and not be spread out to, like, for example, the polar of the world, which is harmful to the ice caps. And the CO2 capture will essentially be either donated or sold to companies that are recycling it, like as an example would be in cars as fuel. And I will move it on to Omar.
All right, we all know that in Silicon Valley, we're aiming towards a renewable, 100% renewable future. But the sad reality is, with nuclear energy phasing out, we're trying to phase out oil and coal at the same time. Just, it's the truth. Oil and coal has more energy per cubic meter than anything we can produce through renewables. So, other than converting our whole energy system to renewable based, we had to reestablish the infrastructure and rethink it, and how we deliver the energy from the source to the house. So for me, for at least for the energy part for Smarter Future Inc., we're working on smarter energy. Smarter energy has 4 parts for us. It has the smarter electricity grid, the one that connects the source with the houses. We have a smarter home electricity meter, and then we have smarter appliances, and we also have an app that connects the meter and the appliances together and delivers an informative frontier to the customer. As we can see over here on this image, this is the source. We deliver it to the distribution center. Over here, we also have a lot of commercials where we know data centers use the most energy, and then the houses also have a smarter meter, advanced metering infrastructure, home display unit, energy storage, all implemented by Tesla. All right, I'm gonna start off by explaining the graph over here, or the picture. This is our horizontal integration. Horizontal integration for the customer is the smarter home appliances, smarter home app, and the smart home meter. Vertical integration is from the source, and then we have the customer on the bottom, and then we have the centers that control it, and that's basically timed out by a lot of especially the Ghanaian city, Ghanaian country. The technicality of it is we're gonna contract with Siemens to order one of their top sensors to implement it all over the grid. The grid's going to be able to implement machine learning to it, and through machine learning, it's going to be able to predict peak times. It's going to be able to shut itself down, off and on. It's going to be able to diverge electricity from places that needs it to places that needs it more. Because right now, the electricity grid is like an open faucet. You let electricity in, and then whatever the customer needs, you use it. What are we trying to do is deliver exactly what the customer needs. For the smart meter, we're gonna use a system on chip. It's a silicon chip, 7nm based. It has Bluetooth sensors. It has a Bluetooth transmitter. It has a geometric sensor that connects with the customer's phone. Everybody has a phone. It knows how many customers there is in a house, how many there's not, if there's none, if there is, or there is. It basically takes on and off the electricity usage from the house and through the phone, basically, knowing geometric location. That smart meter connects with the next step with the process, which is we're gonna hire the only graduates. We're gonna create jobs that for software engineering people that will basically develop an app which basically let the customer control their smart appliances that are already being in production by a lot of companies like Samsung and LG, and we're already in contract with them. Right. Environmental aspect, we produced a prototype with a grid, the devices, the meter and everything for a single unit, housing unit. We found out that peak load times actually got reduced by 80%, so that brings us to the fact that peak load times are all generated by prediction of the future of using electricity. So basically, right now, as I said before, we only know that there is a peak time when there is a peak time, peak usage. Machine learning is going to avoid all of that by gathering data and predicting the future of the usage. We lowered the power consumption by at least 1 kilowatt per hour, 1 kilowatt usage over the 10 days period. That is over only 10 days gathered of data. For the future data, it will gather more, and it will basically know when to shut off data earlier, sometimes not even turn off the whole house, for example, and that will save us a lot of energy. So overall, we reduced around 35% of the overall usage on the grid, and it can only go better from there.
Okay, and now I'm going to explore the final area of urban development that we haven't covered yet, and that is agriculture. So I want to start by introducing the problem. The problem is that the populations are booming. As populations rise, we're seeing that less land is available per capita to provide food for families. First and foremost, right now we have GMOs that are trying to address that problem. We're trying to address the problem with GMOs. And as far as we can see, it's actually a pretty good solution. There's a study done by Kepler and Quaison stating that since 2014, there have been a 22% increase in crop yields and a 68% increase in farmers' profits through the use of GMOs. So it is a pretty good solution, but we're here to address the fact that resources still remain an issue even after GMOs are employed. So that means that land and water are the foremost issues. Land, as I mentioned earlier, we're not getting more land as more people are being added to the earth. And already 25 million acres of California's land has been allocated for agriculture use. As you can see here, these red areas are areas of high development where high quality farmland is available. So most high quality farmland is here through the central parts of California towards Southern California. A lot of more people are moving into there, a lot more people are settling there, but yet we don't have the land to provide for their food. So the question is, do we spend the land on residential allocation or for farming? Go ahead. So our solution to this is we don't have to make that hard choice. Rather, we can downsize the ground level footprints of these farming operations. So through that, the company has offered 3 solutions. The first being 100% indoor vertical farms. The second being indoor vertical farms with greenhouse protrusions, and the third being offshore vertical farming with desalination. Vertical farming, before we go on to the next slide, is essentially the practice of stacking your farms. So it's just a skyscraper turned greenhouse or turned farming operation. Go ahead. So to highlight this a little bit more, I wanted to go first into the 100% indoor vertical farms. So we're going to be offering 2 main floor plans. The first being 2,500 square foot ground level footprint, so just 50 by 50, 40 floors, completely high rise, giving us giving the county 100,000 square foot of operable area, 80% of which is going to be farming allocated, so that equals to 1.82 acres of just farming operation. The rest will being restrooms, technical rooms, storage and whatnot. And then the second is going to be a 1,700 square foot ground level footprint, 25 floors, but also in this build we have recommended that the county include 5,000 square foot greenhouse protrusions. So you can see a conceptual drawing of this right here. This has more than 5, but each one of these little glass ovoid structures is another greenhouse that will be using natural lighting for more farmland. Okay, so we can go next, and then we're going to talk about the technical aspects of both both these farms, how are the crops going to be produced? So essentially the main technique will be aeroponics. Now, if you look at this figure, you can see aeroponics is essentially the practice of growing plants without the roots being submerged in any soil or liquid. But instead, the roots are sprayed with nutrients-dense solutions intermittently. This does require more employees to be present for the actual spraying, or it can be automated. More capital costs that way, but just depends. Every farmhouse indoor will be lit by multi-wavelength LED lights that can be Wi-Fi connectable, so that they don't have to be, or they can be remotely operated. Each of these indoor farms will have gas delivery systems for essential gases such as CO2 and nitrogen. These can be easily installed in all buildings. They don't require much extra necessary construction costs. And then every system installed in a vertical farm is computer monitored. They're all connected to a network which can be modulated and automated, turned on, turned off remotely. Okay, so then we'll go on next to the offshore vertical farms. Offshore vertical farms, we're going to target decommissioned oil rigs. The Santa Cruz Sentinel has currently reported since 2016 there are currently 31 vertical farms from the coast of Santa Cruz down to Santa Barbara. So we're going to target those. It has massive farming potential. The one difference is that this is going to be fed through hydroponics. So instead of nutrient solutions being sprayed on the roots, the plants themselves will be submerged in dilute nutrient-rich solutions. This does, however, add the need for water. So to tackle the water issue, we're going to put desalination plants on oil rigs. So you want to go next? Desalination, the main method of desalination, a quick overview of this is going to be seawater of 50 to 60 degrees, pre-treated. If you're following this figure right here, it's pre-treated, then it's fed into a high-pressure pump. We're going to be shooting water from flow rates of 0.8 to 1.2 meters per second through a polypropylene or polyvinylidene fluoride membrane, which is right here. This is a porous membrane which both treats water and removes salt from it. This is going to be removing salt from 48,000 milligrams per liter of salt water. So a normal operation, we're expecting about 2 million cubic meters of water per day. And then the environmental aspects of this is there really aren't many. It's going to save resources such as water and land. All growths that are exposed, such as the greenhouses that are exposed to natural air, are going to serve as carbon sinks. So it's actually carbon negative. And then cost of the environment will probably just be in construction costs, not much in operations. So that is vertical farming, and then we're going to move on to Ulysses.
This Gantt chart was composed just to have our implementation of the designs run a little smoother. And some of those include presenting ideas, on-site meetings, which will take up practically the whole 3-year span, which is what we propose, and developing designs, testing, and finalizing the ideas.
So as a result, Smarter Future Inc. has solutions for several problems already in place. The elevated tram will reduce traffic and carbon emissions. The smarter recycling that we proposed will reduce the amount of waste that goes to landfills. The smarter energy will take the initiative to lower energy usage, as well as lower the load on devices. The CO2 will capture the removal and remove emissions, as well as halt and improve air quality cities. And finally, the vertical farming techniques will increase sustainability of production, which will result in more food. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
We have 2 minutes and 30 seconds for questions.
How long?
2 minutes and 30 seconds for questions.
How long?
27:38.
Joke.
Any questions?
That was a really, that was a good presentation. Okay, I gotta go back and these to your building in the sky with the wraparound. That's what I
That one.
That's, I don't get that.
Yeah.
That's basically greenhouses stacked on top of each other.
They're ovoid greenhouses. So each one of these little discs is its own growth.
But are people living there?
No, so the central building is another, like, more indoor farming with higher climate
That
control,
makes sense.
temperature control,
Yep,
whatnot.
that makes sense.
Yeah,
For
the
example,
greenhouses.
cannabis.
The greenhouses. The greenhouses are just naturally aspirated and yeah.
Now, about what acreage would you have in something like this?
Oh yeah. So after the 1,700 square foot of ground footprint,
Right.
25 floors, and then the 5 additional greenhouses, came out to 47,500 square feet. But then said only 80% of it would be actual growth.
So it's only
Yeah, it's only
0.81 of an acre?
it's only 0.81 of an acre for
Okay.
this one.
But
Recommend.
that seems like a lot of work for less than an acre.
Yeah.
That's why we follow this concept.
In the report, I detailed, or the company detailed that you would obviously want more floors. So I said that for this build, to like actually see like a solid impact, you'd want 40 floors, or for both of these builds, you want 40 floors minimum.
That might work in Japan as they keep.
Yeah, actually, Japan implements a lot of
Yeah,
vertical.
right. But, you know, you do understand, Denise, I know, that this would not, what would it serve
It's not
in
super
California?
practical. Right now, it's not super practical, just because
Right.
I feel like once populations hit to the point where you might actually need to see farmland or something converted to residential land, then this would be an issue, or this would actually play more of a role.
I mean, Smarter Future Inc. is basing.
Yeah, we're trying to prepare.
Exactly. We're making Santa Clara County a model for future. I mean, overall.
Steve Jobs, the computer is stupid.
But then, Smarty here, how many people can you feed?
I wasn't able to find good data, so
Oh,
I
I'm
didn't
sure
want
it's out there.
to throw.
I'm sure I'm gonna find it.
I found data for like most farms are they grow a lot of crop, like a lot of different types of crops, so that's why I couldn't tell you like how many pounds. Of
Right, but like on a community farm now,
Yes.
you're still being graded.
No,
On a
she's-
community farm, how big is their plot? How many do they feed? You could have, I think there's a way to find this out.
There's
But I know you've
California
been
has
busy.
California has usage statistics or farmland statistics for that, and the average like actual operation, each average operation, farmland operation is 325 acres
Mhm.
apiece. So it's pretty big. But then you have to also account for like animal farming and all the.
Just asking. Just so you know what I'll be looking at when I study these in detail.
Gotcha. Yeah. I think I got my bases covered.
I don't know.
You'll see.
Did anyone else have any questions?
No. You look beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You all are
You look
great
beautiful,
presenters.
too.
No, I don't. But all of you are very effective presenters, so I'm not taking that away. Now it comes down to, I nitpick details.